Hey everyone, Aaron here with Elite Watersports, and today we're going to replace a strut on an older kite. A strut's bad, or it might have a leak, or maybe the valve has issues, something like that, but we're just going to go ahead and replace that strut, okay? What you're going to need for tools. You're going to need something to fish the line through, just in case it comes detached. Go ahead and grab it so you can just have it there ready to go, just in case. Obviously, you're going to need some line. You're also going to need a screwdriver. Screwdriver's just for sticking it in the ground. You'll see what happens next. And then you need these cutters so that when you put the new zip tie on, you can cut it out flush so that you don't have any barbs or anything on the end of the zip tie, all right? Additionally, you're going to need some baby powder. Baby powder is going to be for lubricant and to make sure that that bladder can twist and turn and conform to the actual canvas of the kite, all right? So first things first, what we're going to do is grab our line, the very end of that line, and you're going to start taking apart the kite. Every kite brand is going to be a little different. Some have zip ties, some have clips. This one's going to be super simple. You can just look at it and figure out what needs to happen. The hoses are typically always zip tied on, and you're just going to pull hard. And if that doesn't work, then what you're going to do is take those clippers, these things, and cut that zip tie off. Once the zip tie is off, you're gonna push that valve through, okay? To the point where you can still grab a hold of it with your line. This is where you need to be good at tying knots, right? If you happen to have this line slip off the bladder, then you're gonna extend the amount of time it takes for you to repair this kite, okay? So let's loop that around with, like, say, a lark's head or a cinch knot, some sort of restrictor knot. Boom. And then we're going to push that valve through. Now, every brand's a little different. On these Cabrinas, it's a little tougher to push that through that hole. Just take your time and don't be too aggressive. As you push it through, boom. You want to make sure that your kite doesn't go anywhere. So that's what that screwdriver's for. You can wrap the bridle around it, tie a quick little knot, and now you're going to go to the end of the strut and pull the bladder out. Down here is a little Velcro side. Some kites will have like some sewing here that you'll see. For the Velcro, this one does not. You're gonna stick your finger on either side and then figure out which one has the Velcro. Release that Velcro, pull it out, and you're gonna see that bladder now is exposed. Because we have the kite attached to that screwdriver stuck in the ground, now what we can do is just simply pull that bladder out. If it gets stuck, all right, it gets snagged on something, don't rip on it, okay? You don't want to hurt it too bad. Figure out what's going on. It's just stuck on the very end, so I'll stick my finger in there and kind of work it out of that little ledge, and boom. Now, if I still couldn't figure that out, I'll just pull the bladder back into the kite, and then boom. Once that line is exposed, you can go ahead and take it off. And now you're going to attach the new bladder to that line and pull it back through. All right. So this is actually the new bladder. And the key thing here is to make sure that it's properly lubricated and you're putting the strut on the correct side of the kite. The right wingtip or the left wingtip is going to be different than the right wingtip. So if you're doing a complete bladder replacement, make sure that the bladder looks like it should going into the strut. And what I mean by that, if you see the bladder's not made equal, it's going to be a point down on this side versus on the other side, it might be this way, all right? So you need to understand what bladder you're taking out should match the same bladder that you're putting in. The next step is going to have that bladder out here, and that's where that baby powder comes in. You're going to take that baby powder, and you don't have to put a whole lot on it, but don't be, don't be stingy on it. So get that side, get the next side, and what that's going to do is let that bladder to flex and twist the right way and not bind up when you're inflating it the very first time. Now, a little pro tip here is that notice where the valve is, you still have a bunch of material up front, okay? So what you want to do is turn it inside out like a sock. And what that does is when you fill it up with air, that's going to expand up into that crevice of the kite, of the strut material of the kite. You're going to loop that line back on. Make sure that you have it good and tight, okay? And what we're going to do is actually go back up to this screwdriver. And this is very important. This is kind of a secret that I've learned over the years working by myself. You'll release that bridle. And then what you'll do is you'll attach the line that comes out of the strut. You can just do an overhand knot, and you're going to put that on that screwdriver. Now here's the cool thing about this is that now you don't need 2 people or really long arms, all right? We're going to come back down to the strut. We're going to make a taco out of this to kind of protect that valve. And we got a couple rules here, okay? We know that the strut has a valve on it that's only on the left side. So we're going to know that when we put it back in here, it needs to be on the left side. If you notice here, we have a nice seam created when they made the bladder, and that seam is going to follow this sewing seam, and it's like that on every kite in the market. There's no difference. I have yet to find a kite that's any different. Maybe there is. I repair hundreds of models at brands of kites, okay? So this seam is going to follow that seam, and that's the only trick, okay? So as I slide this in, it's kind of tacoed together. I'm going to pull this canopy material, and notice because that line is attached to that screwdriver, the line is going to be taut, and what I do is I pull the kite away from that screwdriver, and that's what's pulling that bladder in. And now what I can do is I can control how fast the bladder goes in. When you're working with other people, they're pulling, you're pulling, everybody's tugging, and you're not in unison. Now it makes it a lot easier actually. So look at that seam again. I'm re-emphasizing that because that is the most important thing you can do. And you're just going to be pulling that bladder or pulling the kite away from that screwdriver anchored in the ground and making sure that that seam sticks on the top of the strut canvas. All right. Now here's the tricky part. Some manufacturers have a different technique, all right? You have to understand that sometimes the bladder might be out 4 or 5 inches or so, or it might be all the way tight like it is here, right? We're gonna slide that in, and the ultimate goal here is to make sure that you don't have any of this bladder exposed where it can fill up with air and pop, right? It needs this canvas pressing up against it so it doesn't pop. So in this case, we're gonna do nice even folds on the very end, much like the bladder that I took out, that was OEM, the original bladder. So I just want to mimic what came out. I want to put it back in like that, all right? Then what we'll do, after we spread it all out, we'll do that taco fold so it looks nice and clean. The Velcro goes on the left, and we'll tuck it in. I keep my thumb over top of the Velcro so that I can get in all the way. And then I want to make sure that that Velcro piece is super square to the inside sewn Velcro piece. Boom. The end of it needs to be pretty well exposed and unfolded so that that bladder can fill this area, okay? All right, now we're going to go back up to where the valve came out. This is the trickier part on this model, okay? On this brand, it's a very, very small hole, and you have to, you know, mold it and kind of twist it just to get that valve to come out. If you installed it really, really nice and easy like I did with that taco technique, usually the valve's exposed right away and you have no twists or turns, okay? So follow the rules, all right? So once that valve is out, you want to make sure that you're not twisting, yanking, or pulling on it too hard, because you may damage the brand new valve, all right? Once you get it in there, your next objective is to get that line off. There's other knots we could use. This works just fine. I could get fancy if I wanted to have it like a slip knot so I don't have to struggle so much, but you know, this works, okay? Boom, so the line's off. Now what I want to do is attach this hose and finish off this side of the project, okay? Now there's 2 ways of thinking about it. You can either be super technique based and like super confident in your abilities. You can go ahead and hook it all up, pump up the kite and see what happens because you're confident in it, or take your time, go ahead and inflate the strut first, which would be the better technique for quicker repair time. So I'm gonna grab the air compressor and just put some air into it. Now what we're gonna wanna do is fill up the strut with air to make sure that it's actually filling out the canopy, this crevice on the end, and then also make sure that it's filling out on the end of the wingtip. If we see any indentations at all in the bladder, that means we have a twist. We need to stop, remove the bladder, put it back in. Don't be massaging it, trying to untwist it by, you know, working it around and stuff like that. 9 times out of 10, it's not gonna work, and you're still gonna always have that twist in that bladder, okay? Remember, we use baby powder, so most likely it won't have a twist, and if it did, it'd work itself out. We're gonna take another one of these hoses. You can do soap or whatever, but I just spit on it. That's quickest and easiest way. And then what we want to do is fill it up with air. If you have the air compressor, sure, you can use that. With struts, I just blow it up by air or mouth. All right, I clip it off. And what I want to do is look at the whole entire strut and make sure there's no indentations. And then I want to stick my finger on the back side over here and notice that there's a little bit of void right here. That's pretty bad, okay? So I want to actually massage that a little bit and then maybe squeeze it around, and then boom, now that void is filled. I can also go ahead and pop it, let all that air out, and then refill it again. And then boom, now it's definitely filled out. So that's the number one issue we have with bladders on struts, is that they don't fill this void and then you get a pop, okay? So that's gonna be basically how you take it out and install a new strut. And then you wanna make sure you connect all of your pieces back together, okay? The one thing that I see go wrong quite frequently, and it's happened to me several times, is that this bridle somehow gets underneath here. Just because we're moving fast and whatnot, we hook everything up, and then when the client goes out, they hook up their kite, they don't look at their bridles, most people don't, and then this bridle gets tight and it pulls the valve or the hose off, and then we have a deflate. Customers are not happy with that, okay? So make sure that you make double check all of your work, all right? Okay, so we'll put this back on. We'll grab our zip ties, put our zip tie on here. Very important that we're now going to clip the end of it so no barbs are exposed. And then we're gonna put the cabrina clip back together. I'm just gonna take this one out because the client actually lost this. I have to go find one or order one. We're gonna put that clip back in. Double check our work, that looks great. Slide this cover back over. Make sure it clips this little loopy thing. And boom, we have it completed. Now remember, I did steal that clip off this side, but we're gonna be replacing this leading edge here in a second, all right? All right, so that's gonna be the strut from start to finish. A couple main things is watching that seam go into the bladder and making sure that void is filled when you fill it up before you go maximum PSI. All right, so any questions, just give us a call, 727-800-2202, or come check us out here at the shop. And remember, this takes years of experience, so it's not going to be that easy and streamlined your first couple times. So if you're hesitant on it, just let us do it. All right, have a good day. See ya.